Good morning, everybody. And a very happy Father's Day to all of you fathers out there. Jason and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. We're doing some sermon stuff, and there was a brief window of time where I was going to be doing the sermon this week. I have a Father's Day sermon ready to go. So the thing is, the next time you hear me preach in a couple of weeks, you're probably getting a Father's Day sermon, whether you like it or not. I'll give you the short version. Today's fathers are absolute heroes and doing things that I don't think they get credit for. So we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Really, parts of those principles are going to apply today, because today it's my final class. It's not the final class. It's my final class in our leadership quarter. If you are just joining us this morning, first of all, thank you for being here. It means a lot to have people who don't know us willing to come and check us out. So that's my first thing. And secondly, you are in the middle. If you are visiting with us, or if you haven't been here in a while, you're at the end. You're not in the middle. You're at the end of a quarter on biblical leadership. So I'm going to finish mine. This class was pushed back 3 times. Because I don't know, for those of you who maybe haven't picked up on this, I have a weird tendency to turn a single slide into a 3-part series. But you know what I thought? And I really and truly, I had an actual concrete thought a couple of years ago that felt very freeing. There's always going to be, was this some like black magic? What's happening? Spider. There was a spider? Spider. Christian leadership. I don't see what's happening. One of my brothers sees the spider. That was a VBS prop. You ruined everything. Oh, hey, Tara, I'm glad you said that. So this is not normal. I do not have a coloring activity for you this morning. So if you walked in thinking what's happening in this place, VBS starts tonight. You should definitely come if you're coming with a kid. If you're not, you should come and get to work. So definitely be here for VBS. I'm glad you said that. What were we talking about? Something. Spiders. Yeah, all of that. I'm working on very little sleep. So I was not paying attention. I'm glad you were. So my final class in leadership quarter is today. I want to talk, and this is going to be my opportunity to talk really directly to church leadership and church vision. We've kind of talked around some of that, which I know may sound odd, but my goal has been throughout the course of this quarter to give you leadership principles that are livable and practical in your personal life, in your family life, in your school life, in your social life, in your organizational and professional life. This morning, I want to really dive into church leadership as a concept. I want to try to answer some questions for those of you who may not necessarily understand why churches look the way they look, but we're going to get to that in just a second. I'm going to ask a question that's going to look like a rhetorical question. You're going to think I don't want you to answer it. I legitimately want to hear what your brain does, okay? There's a psychology part of my life that I just can't get away from. Okay, so here's the question. I'm going to just stay with me, and I honestly want to hear your thoughts. Okay, we're going on a trip. Okay, that's the setup. We're going on a trip. Okay, some of y'all, and my favorite rocket ship. Stop it. I heard it. I got it. I had the same thing. We're going on a trip. Now go pack. What are you bringing? All the information you're getting is on the screen in front of you. We're going on a trip. Now go pack. What are you bringing? Raise your hand like civilized people. Yes, what are you bringing? Clothes. That's a little too vague. Just clothes in general. You know what? You have eliminated yourself from the nudist beach we were going to go to. See? You messed the whole thing up. What are you packing? Toothbrush and toothpaste. You would be fine for the nudist beach, apparently, because that's all you're bringing. What else? Yes?
You take the appropriate clothes for the trip you're taking.
Interesting how you just managed to wiggle your way. Appropriate clothes for the trip we're taking. Now, I'm confused as to how you would determine that based on what you see in front of you, but I like where your head's at, Jack. I like you trying to like wiggle in through the rules. That's good.
Major mountains,
Oh, so you're packing for both?
either one, whichever you want.
You're going to coin flip and pick one or the other. I like that. That's courage. Courage is, you know what? Swim trunks. That's what I'm bringing. You're going to Alaska. All right. Yes.
Bible and cell phone.
Bible and cell phone? Okay, good. Yes. Sunglasses. All right. Yes. Snacks. Maybe I'm not going to feed you on this trip. That's good. Yeah.
In my case, it would be meds.
Meds?
Medication.
I feel like you're not the only one that would apply to. She said meds. I need my meds. Got it. Yes.
Credit card.
Credit card. Whose? Can I pick the person? All right. Yes, one more. A first aid kit. All right. So I don't know if it's the man in me, but that never even crossed my mind. Even when I was doing this little thought exercise, like in my office, that never once crossed that I would need a first aid kit. That's amazing. All right. So here's what I want to point out, okay? Your brain, when asked this question, immediately did what you should have done, which is to say, I don't have enough information. I don't really know how to answer this question. When you started to answer it, you gave me answers, but they lacked specificity sometimes. You tried to give me as broad and general answers as you can. Here's my fear. My fear is that oftentimes the reason that churches feel disjointed is because this is how we lead them. We tell them we're going on a trip. We're not real sure where the destination is. We're not sure exactly what's going to happen along the way. We don't necessarily give you the specificity that's required. We just tell you to go pack your bags, and then we struggle when people are stressed out about whether they're packing appropriately or not. I think this is actually the way a lot of organizations function. I think it's the way a lot of schools function. I think it's the way a lot of families function. Now, here's what I really wanted to point out. Your answers to this question without any additional information are all basically rooted in one thing. They're rooted in fear. Because you don't know where we're going, you need a first aid kit, and you need to make sure you have a credit card. Because you don't know where we're going, you're thinking about, okay, I don't want to get stuck. Okay, that's where your brain goes. In lieu of vision, the default is fear. I don't know exactly where I'm going, so I need a jacket. Why do I need a jacket? Because I don't want to be somewhere cold and not have a jacket. I need swim trunks. Why? Because I don't want to end up in a situation where I need swim trunks and I don't have them. Our brains generally go to fear and protection. With a destination in mind, with specificity, you stop thinking in terms of fear and start thinking in terms of maximizing the experience. So for example, if I changed the prompt and told you we're going on a trip to a tropical beach, would it change the way you pack? Yeah, because now you're not fearful of what you might miss. Now you're thinking about what can I take that will maximize my experience. That's what clarity of purpose does. What clarity of purpose does is it allows you to settle in to where a final destination is, and you can start thinking with utility. You can start thinking about how do I make that experience the best experience possible. With a small vision, generally speaking, we default to fear. And I want to make a broad statement. Now, my personal history, I've been connected to a lot of churches over the years. I grew up as a preacher's kid. We were in a number of different churches. I tell my dad, and I don't want him to answer the question because I like to just pretend in my mind that I already know. Either he was really good or really bad because we kept going to different churches. I think I know the answer to that question. He was a gifted preacher, but we were exposed to a lot of different churches. I've worked in a number of different churches, some local. I worked in churches who were not local. So I've been around a lot of churches. I don't want you to hear me necessarily describing Eastridge now. I just want to talk in broad terms about my experience in churches. We oftentimes do this. We give the broadest vision possible. And we do it with good intent. We give these really broad pictures because we want to cast a really wide net and make sure everyone feels like they can get on board with that vision. We want to be inclusive of all different personality types and all different goals and all different individual personalities themselves. So we cast this really wide net, but it means our people don't necessarily know exactly who we are, exactly what we stand for, and exactly what we're doing. And as a result of that, there's a lot of fear. Because every decision becomes a flashpoint and an argument. Today is what we're talking about. We're talking about vision. I want you to hear right out of the gate what I believe. This is a Ryan philosophy. Without holding to a clear and defined vision, your vision is just the aggregate of your most recent choices. Okay? Without a clear and defined vision, and without holding to that clear and defined vision, by proxy, your vision becomes just the most recent things that you have done. Vision drift. So we start with a really good vision, but we end up kind of doing things that don't fit that vision. Vision drift tends to happen because we don't have a vision front and center that we use to filter day-to-day decisions. I'm going to give you an example of that. So I try to come up with one that would be useful, that would allow you to kind of remove some of the emotionality of thinking about churches. So let's talk about restaurants for just a second, okay? Let's talk about how a restaurant vision can fall apart. I want to imagine for a minute that you have a restaurant whose purpose, the mission statement is make great scratch food. Like, we're going to make everything fresh. We're going to make everything from by hand, and we're going to do it with care and love. All right, that's the vision. So we start the restaurant with that in mind, and that's our goal. So we get up and we're making biscuits at 4 a.m. We're doing all the hand-made things that are going to make this restaurant great. If that vision stops being utilized, and if it stops being front and center, what happens over time is maybe we get 6 months down the road and realize, man, if we could stop hand making those biscuits and start buying the frozen ones, that saves us a lot of money. So let's make that one decision. Now, everything else, we're still it's fine, we're gonna do the thing, but the biscuits, we're gonna bring in the frozen ones. I'm telling the story of Cracker Barrel, by the way. We're gonna bring the frozen ones. Not exaggerating, and I'm gonna tell you why it happened, because that is a real part of this story. So we're gonna start buying the frozen ones. And then 6 months later, man, that biscuit decision saved us a lot of money on the bottom line. If we do the same thing with the meats, with the breakfast meats, that would save us a lot more money. Okay, over time, vision drift has happened. The vision may still, out loud, the vision may be we're gonna make scratch food, but based on the fact that you don't use that vision to make your decisions, what's the vision now of the restaurant? Maximize profit. That's who we are. Now, that literally happened to Cracker Barrel, not because of a conscious choice within the leadership itself, but because Cracker Barrel was purchased by a private equity company. And all your restaurants that you love that are all garbage now, it's because they were bought by private equity companies whose main goal is maximizing profit. The vision changed. Now, what's on the wall maybe didn't change, but vision drift happened because you stopped using that vision to make decisions. All right, I'm gonna give you one that's a little closer. A family vision. Imagine a family who says, our goal is to love God as best we can, love each other as best we can, and make a difference in the world. It's a good vision for your family. Really good vision. But we don't really say that out loud. We don't really talk about it. So what we do instead is we kind of live day to day to day. We just kind of survive a week at a time, surviving our kids' schedules. So what happens is over time, because that vision isn't utilized, what happens over time is you start viewing family not as that mission statement. You start viewing your family as just a place where you go to recover from your real life. Parents use the home as a place to recover from their job. Kids use the home as a place to recover from their real life, from their school and from their sports. So what's that do? That means your home is not really a place where real people exist. It's a home where you all collectively catch your breath from your actual lives that matter. If we're not using our vision to actually make decisions, we're gonna create that problem. All right, so I got a bunch of stuff I'm gonna roll through relatively quickly, but stay with me. I wanna show you what a family vision informs. In a family, a vision informs how you allocate your free time. It informs what you say yes and no to. It informs what you reward. Folks, please hear me. Your family vision can be one of nobility, one of faith, one of God. But if all you reward is their straight A's or their all-state basketball or their select team baseball, you are a family of status. That's what you actually value. If all you reward is when they are acknowledged as being better than their peers, you're creating a family of status. Your vision can be, we love God, but you're rewarding only the things that make them stand out in the real world. All right, how we spend our money. Are we a family that genuinely cares about others? Are you putting your money to work in that regard? How we describe ourselves. Talk to me about your kids. Folks, I am so proud of my kids. They're on my socks. Okay, I've got my kids' faces on my socks this morning. This was my Father's Day gift. April put herself on there too, by the way. I appreciate that. My whole family is on my socks. Ask me about my kids, and I'm prone to doing the same things that you do, which is to talk about their stuff. Okay, this kid plays this sport, and this kid does this. How we describe ourselves should be filtered through our vision. I should talk to you about their character, about their personalities, about what makes them unique. How we describe ourselves, it informs what we consume. If we have a family vision, we need to be cautious that we're filtering what we consume through that family vision. It informs what holidays look like. Meaning, if Easter is about a rabbit and candy, our vision may say one thing, but our actions project something completely different. In a family, our vision informs who influences us. It informs what friendships we pursue. It informs how much time we spend with our extended family. It informs how we respond to difficult people. It informs the kind of marriage we want to build. It informs what is worth arguing about. Spouses, what's worth arguing about in your home? If you argue about everything, you don't have a family vision. You're just surviving a day at a time. It informs what family traditions get protected. All right, so you can see when we're talking about family vision, I care a lot about this topic. We actually have done this as a family ministry a couple years ago, and we're about due to do it again. Alan and I spent 6 weeks with our youth group parents, helping them craft a functional and usable family vision. This matters a lot to me because your family vision does so much. Now, here's why I need you to hear me, because where we're talking about families, organizations, or churches, when your vision is unclear, every preference becomes a principle. When there's no clear vision, every preference becomes a principle. When your vision is clear, you can kind of disagree on methods because you're united around the mission. If I can trust the destination, if I understand the ways in which a church, a family, an organization, if I understand the goal you've got, if I understand what you're trying to do, who you're trying to reach, who you're trying to speak to, if I understand that, I can probably give some grace on methodology that I don't necessarily love. If I don't know where we're going, the methodology makes me think that's evidence we're going somewhere I don't want to go. Okay, without a clear vision, if I disagree with a method, that might be a preference method, that looks like a threat. It looks like that's a sign that we're going in a direction I don't want to go. You know the solution to that? The solution to that is not to tend to every one of those preference arguments. The solution is to make your vision really, really clear. If you do that, you provide a lot of comfort. So let's talk about what a church vision informs. Okay, with a church vision, with a functioning, this is where we're going. It informs which issues are central and which are secondary. It informs what's worth fighting over. Church, I love you. Not everything is worth fighting over. Not everything is worth. I don't want to have 6 meetings and a series of meetings about carpet. I don't want to have to talk to 17 people before we take a table out of a room, which we've had to do before. I don't want to do that. Not everything's worth fighting for. It also, a church vision helps you understand what's worth letting go. It helps you understand when leaders need to stand firm. Your church vision helps your elders understand this is when we need to be really firm. It also helps them understand when we can probably be a little bit flexible. Okay, a vision does all of those things. In church, a vision informs how we spend our money, which ministries get funded, which projects get postponed, what facilities matter, whether we prioritize programs, people, missions, staff, or buildings. It matters with what we celebrate. Listen to the language of any church What they celebrate will help you understand the vision of that church. I want to give you an example. A church that is focused on discipleship needs to be out loud celebrating transformed lives and telling those stories, which is my last one, telling stories. A church that's focused on evangelism may celebrate the baptisms that they've had in their church. I understand people get really weird about like, we don't need to count baptisms. And I understand that, but if you're an evangelistic church who's trying to reach the lost, baptisms is a pretty good metric to consider. Are you baptizing people? A church that's focused on missions, that really defines itself by its passion for the mission field, will probably celebrate and tell stories about the amount of people they've funded to go off into the world and spread the gospel of Jesus. Okay, so you see kind of how this works. Now, I want to make sure you're hearing me. What metrics matter? There's this really weird reality with churches where we don't ever want to use attendance as the metric, because it's not. You want to fill a church, there's a lot of ways to do that I don't necessarily think are going to be honoring the real mission of the church, the global church. That said, if your church has gone from 700 to you and your kids, there's a problem. Okay, so pay attention. If a church is hemorrhaging people, leadership needs to figure out where the holes in the boat are and patch the holes. Okay, so again, I'm not saying that attendance should be the metric, but it is something that we should pay attention to. But what metrics matter to you? What metrics matter to your church? All of that is going to be filtered by your vision. All right, I want you to hear all of the metrics I just described, all the stories I just described. In a certain sense, some of you probably grabbed onto some of them. Some of you thought, yeah, a discipleship church celebrating transformed lives, that's where I want to be. Some of you thought an evangelistic church that baptized in the unchurched and the lost, that's where I want to be. Some of you probably thought a church that's focused on missions, that's where I want to be. Are any of you wrong if that's what you're passionate about? The answer is of course not. All of those metrics matter. But for a church, we have to be pretty specific in what we're doing. All right, so I'm gonna help work through that statement I just said. That's what the rest of this class is about. Without vision, every disagreement feels like a threat. Without vision, every disagreement feels like a threat. If you don't know where you're going, every decision that gets made becomes a fight to the death. Now, why does that happen? It happens not because that issue is necessarily worth fighting over. It's because I think, if I don't know what the long-term vision is, I think everything that comes up is a battle between my side and their side to figure out which way we're going to end up. Vision is how you prevent that from happening, not by appeasing every small argument. All right, before we get into the church part, I wanted to mention personal vision. And to do it, I needed to be really vulnerable. Okay, I could talk in broad strokes about professional vision, but I would like to pause and tell you that for a couple of years here, I was operating without a vision. Okay, I had a general idea of what I was doing, but I had here was my vision. Whatever people want, do it. Bad vision. That was my vision. I fought going on sabbatical for a year and a half. I was technically eligible by our terms a year and a half before I took it. And the reason I fought it was because I didn't think I could leave for a month because I was trying to do everything people wanted. I realized a while back, I don't know exactly when, that I was operating without a vision. So I had to work through a vision for my ministry and for what I can do. And let me tell you what it informed. For me, it informed how much time I spend counseling. I even talked to April about whether I was going to tell you this or not. But I had a thought about, 2.5 years ago. If I'm going to be counseling like it's a private practice, I'm just going to go back to private practice. Because in truth, the complexity of worshiping alongside people who I counsel will break somebody. It's not easy. It's not easy to hear stories and then be standing in a circle of people talking with our work. Our families are mingling. That's so weird. Imagine for a second, for those of you who haven't been there, imagine for a second, you've had a therapy session where you've divulged your deepest, darkest personal secrets. And then on Sunday, that guy's standing right in front of you with his kids. It's kind of weird. my thought was, if all I'm gonna do is 40, 45 clients a week, I'm just gonna go back to private practice. I don't have to mess with any of that. All right, so then some stuff started to happen. I had a vision. It started to help me understand how much of this I can do, and it also helped me understand who I can and can't counsel and what I can and can't do. I had to have that vision. Saying yes to everything that crossed my plate was killing me and driving me out of ministry. So what I did was work through a vision to figure out what I can and can't do. I also had, and I didn't put it on the slide, I had to figure out who I'm willing to just kind of accept that they're gonna be mad at me, because it happens, because I can't please everybody. It's just not the reality. I want, it's a principle that I've learned a long time ago. I try to do for a few what I wish I could do for everybody, but I wasn't doing that for years. I was just trying to do everything for everybody. It also informed how much time I spend teaching. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but since my sabbatical, I'm up here a lot. And the reason for that is this is my favorite thing I get to do. Don't get me wrong, I love counseling sometimes, most of the time. This is my favorite thing I get to do. This, I could do this as much as you'll tolerate me. And I realized I was lightening my teaching load and increasing my counseling load, and it wasn't working. All right, it helped me. You don't know this. There's something happening right now that you are unaware of. Now, I'm gonna put it in your ear in case any of you have somebody you want me to consider. I am actively looking to develop leaders within this congregation to do a number of different things. One of them is I'm trying to find men with a voice, because I feel as though we have done a poor job of facilitating the growth of men to be public, vocal leaders in a church. I don't wanna fear what the future looks like, and the best way I can do that is by trying to develop not just young leaders, but some of you who have that potential, who are grown adults, and I'm looking for you, and I'm gonna start plugging you in places where you may not expect it. It helped me understand how much time I can spend in administrative tasks. Some of you have emailed and texted me and not heard back from me for days. I'm trying to operate from a more functional vision. Next, how much time I spend attempting to engage the broader community and what that looks like. I'm gonna keep this real quick. I hate Daniel Rose as much as I love Daniel Rose, and let me tell you why. If you don't know Daniel, he's amazing. He is an inspirational young man. He is a guy that this church is blessed and honored to have. Unfortunately, he made a podcast studio upstairs that's really, really nice, and I don't want to be a podcaster. But maybe it's time for us to be thinking in those types of terms. I don't like it. I've never had any desire to be a guy that puts my life online or my opinions online. But maybe it's time we rethink that, and stupid Daniel making a studio didn't help. I could always just be like, we don't have the space. What do you want me to do? Now Daniel's like, we've got the space. You want to come? All right. I don't even think he's in here, but we're recording this. He's going to see this. My vision also had to help me understand how much time I could be there for my family, and when there's a conflict, who I disappoint. Now, my wife will attest to the fact that sometimes they're the ones I disappoint. It happens. It's a natural part of ministry. There are times where I can't be at things because I need to be there for you. That's a natural part of ministry. I'm okay with that. They're okay with that. There are times, though, where that's not going to happen. There's times where I need to be there for my family. All right, so let's go through. I got 20 minutes-ish. You're going to be a couple minutes late this morning because I got a lot of ground I need to cover. Here's what a vision needs to be. It needs to be clear, compelling, operational, shared, consistent, and adaptable. Okay, so those last two words I need to dwell on for just a second. That clear vision, that compelling vision. I need you to understand what we're doing, and I need you to understand why we're doing it. I need it to be operational. Okay, I don't need it to be abstract. Bring people to Jesus. Anybody want to argue with that vision? It's a good vision. It's not operational enough. I need the church to be able to help you put one foot in front of the other and operationalize that message. I need it to be a shared vision. Do you know what we don't have in churches, at least in healthy churches? A dictatorship. I don't like that. I think I'd be a good dictator. I think I would be a fantastic, all-powerful vision caster, and everyone just does what I say. Anybody want to sign up for that? Thank you. We don't do that. It needs to be a shared vision, which means it needs to be my thoughts and your thoughts and your thoughts and we need to put them together, and we need to have a shared vision that is owned by everybody. It can't be shoehorned by leadership. It needs to be consistent, which means we don't need to bend with the changing tides. However, it needs to be adaptable in the sense that things may actually change with new information, okay? What I mean is, your vision from 20 years ago may not necessarily be operational as the technology and the culture changes. Doesn't mean the mission's bad. It just means that we've got to be able to operationalize it as things change. All right, so here's the full picture. We have 3 different variations of vision. 1, a mission. Why do we exist? 2, a vision. What are we going to emphasize in order to fulfill that mission? And 3, the strategy, which is how we're going to actually pull it off. Now, here's where we're going to get to the church part. We're going to stay with this for the rest of our time together, okay? You walk into almost any Bible teaching church that declares Jesus as Lord, and you ask what their mission is, probably going to get that. It's a Great Commission. Okay? More than likely, that is going to be the answer you get. This is a non-negotiable. All churches who claim Jesus as Lord are obligated to operate around these words. Okay, it's not a like, actually we're going to do something different. We're going to go away from the Great Commission. You can't do that. Okay, you don't get to like modernize your church in that way. So this is the operating principle for all Bible-believing church. But if you're new, if you are unfamiliar with the various denominations, you're unfamiliar with how these different faith structures work, you walked in here this morning not really sure what the difference is between one church or another, there's a question that we have to ask. If this is the same operating mission for various churches, why do they look so different? Why do they sound so different? I want to try to answer that question with the rest of our time this morning. I want to start by telling you I don't think they ever looked the same. I think the church in Jerusalem looked different from the church in Antioch, which looked different from the church in Philippi. I think the church serving widows in Acts 6 looked different from the churches that Paul was planting amongst the Gentiles. I think there was a different emphasis. I think they had the same gospel, the same mission, and the same Jesus, but with a different emphasis. So the Great Commission tells us where we're going, but the Great Commission, in my opinion, is the culmination of our mission. It's not the totality of it. It's the culmination of 3 years of public ministry in the life of Jesus that gave us vision. Okay, I think in order to figure out our vision, I think we have to pay attention to the totality of the teaching of Jesus. I don't think we pull the Great Commission and decide that is the only place we're going to go. I want to look at the life of Jesus. I want to look in depth at what he taught, not just with his words, but with the way he lived his life and who he interacted with. So what I want to try to show you in the next few minutes are 3 places that I think Jesus focused that are fantastic places for churches to focus. First, one thing I want to emphasize, to Jesus, children matter. That is a vision for a church. To Jesus, children matter. And I want to demonstrate this by looking at Matthew chapter 19. Now, there's a bunch of places we could have gone. Okay, to demonstrate this point, we could have gone to a bunch of different places. I want to go to Matthew chapter 19, and I'm going to just read the verses you see on the screen in front of you. Then children were brought to him that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked the people, but Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." And he laid his hands on them and went away. The disciples in this moment see children as an interruption, which is very ancient world thinking. It is a modern phenomenon that children are at a vaulted status. They're in a place where we prioritize kids. In the ancient world, that was just absolutely not the case. They were seen as secondary. The idea that they were supposed to be seen and not heard, the ancient world did that way better than your grandparents. Okay? Children were not valued in the ancient world, but Jesus sees and acknowledges them as central to the kingdom. The correction he offers in this moment isn't just kindness. He's not just saying oh, I feel bad for these kids. No, they're fine. He's not offering a concession. He's giving you a vision and a priority. The disciples are trying to protect Jesus' time from children, and Jesus says, never, never prevent children from coming to me. Folks, With this and a bunch of other passages, there's a lot of kids' passages we could have gone to. Here's what we acknowledge. We acknowledge that a church could reasonably assume that one of the ways in which we fulfill the Great Commission is by investing heavily in the next generation. If a church is going to work with vision, prioritizing kids is a massive, massive part of that vision. Folks, for the first time in my life, I have seen decisions and realities in front of me over the last 6 years that demonstrated our culture doesn't really value kids. We like them as a prop. We like to use them to push our particular causes, but our culture doesn't really value kids. The church needs to. The church needs to value children. The church needs to value children. Our VBS is amazing. I love that it takes this church over. If there's any part of you that's annoyed by the decorations, we're trying to fulfill the Great Commission. The Great Commission is trying to speak to the next generation. All right, it also means, now this is where, so far you're all like, yeah, this is heartwarming, okay? I'm gonna step on your toes. Folks, it means that if a church has to choose between tending to its older members or tending to children, and the debate is purely preference, a healthy church should prioritize kids, and a healthy Christian should make that real easy. If we're talking preference, a healthy Christian says, no, tend to them. Make sure the kids are here. Make sure the kids feel loved. Make sure the kids feel accepted. Make sure the kids feel the love of Jesus. If you have been a Christian for 50, 60 years, man, God bless you. And God bless all of the adults in your life who poured into you, who helped raise you in Christ to get you to a place where you now are so committed to your church family that you're here regularly and you invest in it. God bless you for that. It is now your job to be that for someone else. It is now your job to ensure that kids grow up feeling like the church is theirs. They feel connected and loved and feel tended to. All right, so to Jesus, children matter. To Jesus, people outside the bubble matter. And I wanted to use that phrase specifically because I think there's a way we teach this that gets a little too broad, and I want to be specific. People outside the bubble matter. I want to look at Luke chapter 19. If you are familiar with the story of Zacchaeus, this is where we find his story. Luke chapter 19. He entered Jericho and was passing through, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich, and he was seeking to see who Jesus was. But on account of the crowd, he could not because he was small in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked at him and said, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they all saw it, they grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. That's an important sentence for you to hear. Folks, everybody knows Zacchaeus is a sinner. Jesus makes time specifically to identify him and to see him. It's not an accident. He does it on purpose. To Jesus, people outside the bubble matter, which means one of the ways a church can fulfill the Great Commission is by intentionally engaging people who are far from God, making a conscious choice that we are going to do what we can to pursue those who are far from God. He doesn't accept Zacchaeus, he pursues him. He doesn't just allow Zacchaeus a place where he can see Jesus walk past. He stops and pursues him. Church, do you want to fulfill the calling of Jesus? We need to be consciously reaching out and trying to find not just the people who are connected to our church who maybe haven't been in a while, although that's important. We need to be consciously thinking about how do we engage people who don't know this Jesus that we serve? How do we engage people who are distant and far from God? It means a healthy church looks to draw people to Jesus. All right, so we've got children matter, we've got people outside the bubble matter, and I'm going to give you another one. Healthy disciples matter. There are dozens of passages I could have used to demonstrate this point. I wanted to choose the one from Mark chapter 3. And he went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him and might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. Folks, we sometimes lose the context of Jesus gathering 12 people who are really close to him. You know what the context is? He didn't have to do that. That's the context. The context is we kind of take it as a given. Well, that was the plan. That's how it was implemented. Right, but it didn't have to be the plan. Jesus had all he needed. He had crowds. He has the power to heal people. Jesus does not need a team of people to deliver the message that he is going to deliver. He could have just preached and then let the chips fall where they may. Why did he choose 12 and narrow that focus and spend, of those 3 years of public ministry, spend a lot of time not just teaching to the masses, but building up that small group? He did that because one of the ways in which we can fulfill the Great Commission is by developing disciples intentionally. So a church vision could say, our job is to make sure the people in our pews, in our chairs, to make sure those people are equipped with the knowledge and with the wisdom and with the ability to engage with people in depth in a way that maybe is more than the average person. Okay, somebody who actually spends intentional time learning. How do we talk to people who have no biblical knowledge? How do we talk? We started this conversation recently. I'm going to go back to it because I think it's a really important conversation. How do we talk to a Muslim about Jesus? You need to know the answer to that question. You need to know the answer to that question because you're going to be given opportunities to do that. All right, so how do we fulfill the Great Commission? There's a couple different ways that I've tried to demonstrate this morning. Okay, I gave you 3. There's a bunch of other ones. I picked 3. So Jesus prioritized children, he prioritized outsiders, he prioritized disciples. A church vision could, if you decided as church leadership, we really want to focus on next gen ministry. We want to try to develop children who can go out and be warriors for the kingdom. So we're going to throw most of our resources and focus and attention into children's ministry. That doesn't mean we spend every budget dollar on kids. It means we prioritize children's ministry. It means next gen. We focus on parents. We focus on young people. We have an actual intentional young adult ministry, which is something a lot of churches in suburban areas don't really do very well. If a church said we want to focus on outsiders, okay, we're going to develop evangelism and outreach. If a church decided we want to focus on discipleship, so we're going to form leaders, we're going to develop personal accountability. If a church decided to do any one of these 3 things, are they operating within the framework of the Great Commission? Absolutely. But, and this is the part I'm going to disappoint you, because up to now, you've thought, yeah, let's do all that. Church, I don't know that you can do all that. I don't know that any church can do all that. I think churches have to make choices about what they prioritize and how they prioritize them. And I don't think just save everybody all the time is specific enough to be operational. It's good. I'm not fighting it. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to save everybody. But I am saying that if you want to operationalize a vision, you want people in your congregation to know what you stand for and who you are, we kind of have to decide what we're going to prioritize and focus on. And how do we do that? It's not which one's right. All of these are right. It's what does your ministry team look like? What are they gifted in? What does your assembled people look like? Where are their passions? Where are their strengths? What does our leadership look like? What does our geography look like? Where are we? Who are we? All of those things have to factor in and eventually give us where our area of focus can be. And our area of focus is going to be different from a church in Greenville, is going to be different from a church in Clarksville, Tennessee, is going to be different from a church in Knoxville, Tennessee, is going to be different from a church in San Antonio. Our vision, how we live, all of those churches can be operating under the Great Commission, but how we actually do it is going to be unique to us and specific to our strengths and weaknesses. Now, if you think to yourself, well, hold on, I don't know that sounds right, that a church should try to pick its couple of things that it does well. I get it. Maybe it's a contentious point, but I would like to offer one piece of evidence. The evidence is the Gospels. Why do we have 4 of them? Why are there 4? Would one story have done it? Absolutely. The gospel of Jesus would have been fine. Just give me the book of Jesus that tells the story. And then all the other letters are included. Why do we have 4 gospels? Folks, because they all served a slightly different purpose. Now, it helped with 4 different stories. It helped us verify what we were seeing. It helped us. There's a lot of reasons that we have 4. I'm not trying to imply that this is the only reason we have 4, but we have 4 gospels because Matthew was aimed at a Jewish audience. Mark was probably aimed at a Roman audience. Luke highlighted outsiders, and it was primarily aimed at a Greek and Gentile audience. And John comes along and cleans up the mess. John comes along and says, whoa, 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 you left out all kinds of stuff. And John specifically, when you really look at the purpose of the book of John, John was written for you. It was written to people who were beginning to believe this whole Gnostic teaching about who Jesus was. John comes along and says from the very beginning, I'm going to give you this beautiful poetry at the beginning to tell you who Jesus really was. And we're going to make sure we affirm his deity over and over and over again. We're also going to affirm his being fully man and being fully God. That is good for you, but it was primarily a tool to address Gnostic claims and was really valuable at a broader Christian and skeptical audience. Each gospel tells the story of Jesus. Each gospel. Would you argue that all 4 gospels maintain fidelity to the Great Commission? I don't think any of them are outside of that. They're all maintained, but they all do something a little different. Folks, I think churches can operate the same way. The mission is shared. The mission is shared. Our goal is to try to spend eternity in heaven with Jesus with as many people as possible. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. But how do we do that? If you don't know the answer to that question, then we as church leadership have some work to do. What are we focusing on? What do we value over other things? How are we addressing the culture around us? If you don't know the answer to that question, we've got some work that we need to do. And there are a lot of ways that churches can choose to answer this question and still be right. Okay, that's what I wanted you to hear. I'm going to close with some thoughts that I didn't want to lose, so I jotted them down. Most churches that you are familiar with, that you spend time in, share the same big mission. Jesus settled the question a long time ago what our mission was. You are called to make disciples. But vision is how a local church chooses to faithfully pursue that mission in its unique context. Some churches are going to invest really heavily in the next generation. Some are going to really invest heavily on just reaching people who are far from God. Some will emphasize discipleship and spiritual formation. Some churches are going to be mission-oriented. They're going to develop leaders. They're going to care for the community. Some churches are going to be church plant churches who are looking to plant churches in new places. Folks, the goal is not to do everything. The goal is to faithfully do what God has called your church to do. And I would call on the people of Eastridge to recognize we have a unique position where we are geographically, what time and space we are currently in. And I would encourage us together collectively to ask the question, what do we do well? How has God prepared this church to make a difference? And then let's operationalize it. Ken is up next week. And then we're going to do, I think, Ken, we're basically doing a 2-part leadership. You're going to close it out in 2 parts, yeah? And the last week, you're focusing real specifically on church leadership, yeah? Correct. Okay. All right, so you got 2 more weeks. I would really encourage you to be here. I'm going to close this out with a word of prayer, and then I'll hang around. Gracious Father, I come to you this morning humbled by the task of being any sort of cog in the kingdom wheel. Lord, it feels overwhelming. Church leadership and church fellowship and membership often feels overwhelming because there's so much good that needs to be done, and it can be so broad and so preferential that, God, we worry we're making the wrong choice. We worry that we're somehow not fulfilling our mission and our calling. God, I pray in those moments you'll just keep pointing us back to you. God, I pray that you'll give us the ability to see our gifts, see our abilities, and put them to work. God, I pray that you'll give us the ability to see the work in others, to see the gifting in others and put it to work. God, I pray specifically for the leaders of this congregation, that they will be able to ask those questions and be able to come out with really clear and concrete answers. God, I pray for the members of this church that they will recognize their own gifts, maybe in ways they haven't previously. God, I pray that you'll leave every person in this room this morning with one thought. How can I be a part of this mission? God, I pray that you'll give us the ability to recognize that fulfilling the mission means personally fulfilling the mission. And God, I pray that you'll inspire a group of motivated Christians who are ready to go out and win hearts for the kingdom. Father, I ask these things through your Son. Amen. Thanks, guys.